This is the Succeed in Business podcast. The podcast is inspired by a book titled Succeed in Business, Learn from Your Business Failures and Succeed. The book shares practical information on how to find inspiration in humble beginnings to become a successful entrepreneur. Through this book, you will learn that starting small is always the best way, and if you fail, you are equipped enough to start again. It also provides nuggets at the end that you need to read daily to know how to navigate challenges in your small business.
Hello everyone, this is Mpho Nenweli, and this is the Succeed in Business podcast. This podcast will bring the best in you. Failure is inspiration. Success is within your reach. Do not give up. In today's podcast, I'm talking about the issue of starting and running an environmentally sustainable business in Africa. My focus in all my podcasts is primarily on entrepreneurs, small and emerging startups in Africa. So, what do I mean by running a sustainable business in Africa? The focus is to ensure that the business, even from conception or conceptualization, it considers the triple bottom line. That is a balance between looking at issues of environment, social, and economic. In that way, environment, we simply means that we must take care of the resources that the environment has endowed us, minimizing pollution, extracting resources in an appropriate manner without damaging the environment, socially ensuring that people benefit. We address the issues of poverty, unemployment, and inequality, which are so rife in our countries in Africa. Economically, companies that will start to generate good income to be able to employ people and to be able to pay their owners income. So the focus is to ensure that the businesses that we start and run, they take care of the environment. They do not pollute. They use less energy, consume less water. Where possible, we reuse the water, or we find other uses of grey water or wastewater that we generate. We minimize waste pollution in our operations. We reduce, reuse, and recycle some of the raw material that we have, and some of the products that we take out into the market. And the issue is to ensure from the start of the business that our intentions of running the business are not driven by greed. It is very important that we must know that we are custodians of the environment. And business is an opportunity given to us by God to serve. So it's basically both to serve the people and the planet. So there is no reason for us to start businesses that are primarily aimed at benefiting a few individuals to live large, like we normally know as the norm in a capitalist environment, where the 1% of the population gets extremely rich, whilst 99% are just fodder, or the just slaves for the privileged few. So in that way, then our enterprises or businesses are not saving either humanity, and in some cases not even the environment either. So we need to eliminate the whole thinking of greed, because greed also leads to the unsustainable harvesting of natural resources at the expense of local communities, that in some cases are very vulnerable, and there's not much they can do, to big companies. The importance of running a sustainable business in Africa relates to the issue of understanding that modern development is resource intensive. So therefore, it's important for us to minimize over extraction of resources or exploitation of the resources with severe harm to the environment. We need to balance economic prosperity, social justice, and environmental quality in order to have sustainability. So it's the whole concept of putting the three legs together, the issue of planet, people, and profit. If we don't look at those together in totality, we're not likely to strive for sustainable development or sustainable businesses. Sustainable businesses also are responsible to their shareholders, their employees, consumers, and the planet. So they feel that they have to ensure all these different stakeholders benefit, equitably, and the environment or the planet is not compromised in the process. And the intention is to ensure that whatever we do does not compromise the future generation from benefiting from the existing natural resources and being able to grow their own economies. So we have to be future focused when we start our small enterprises here in Africa. We can do it sustainably, unlike in other cases where people pollute in the form of development, and afterwards then they start off, what can they do now to correct the harm they've done to the environment, which in some cases is irreversible. We are facing critical challenges that require us to run businesses in a manner that is very careful and is considerate to the environment. These challenges include climate change, unprecedented levels of pollution in the ocean, the cutting of natural vegetation, the decline in the biodiversity, in terms of the variety of species and animals that we have, the decline of the quality of soil that we live in, and the microbialism that are found in the soil. We are pushing ourselves through what we call modern development towards the precipice. We are going to end up in a situation where the economies will collapse because the natural resources that feed these economies are not infinite. So if we don't do something better here in Africa, we will find ourselves far worse off. And besides, multinational companies coming from countries such as China will always come here, over-harvest our resources, and go back to grow their own economics at our own expense, leaving us more impoverished. And then we will always have civil wars fighting for very minimal resources that will be left behind. As I've already stated, it is important for us in Africa to ensure that companies do not come from outside of the continent to pollute our pristine environment. Also, at the same time, we also need to avoid the exportation of raw materials, which are unprocessed at very little value, because it then further leads us to extracting more, trying to find value. So we need to come up with value addition approaches here in Africa to ensure that all our economic development is environmental friendly and it doesn't lead to biodiversity deterioration and degradation of the environment and increase in terms of poverty. The focus of any business on the triple bottom line is very important, and this is because the triple bottom line is also a form of planning and reporting. It's a mechanism for planning and reporting, which is aimed at achieving sustainable development for the business and for the country at large. The intention in looking at the triple bottom line is to ensure that we do not necessarily only measure one output, which is basically the one that we focus on, which feeds into our grid, and that is the economic output. How much money are we generating? That is where the problem is. So that is not supposed to be our only primary focus. Focusing on the triple bottom line also enables us to collect data, to measure social, economic, and environmental impact of the business. So we can be able to be on top of our business, looking at an array of areas where the business is having a footprint, and how do we deal with challenges that it generates as it relates to people, planet, and the economy. So the business can also be used as a platform to solve problems that we have instead of just generating money. So problems that are environmental issues, we can run businesses that are just mainly for recycling of waste and creating new exciting products, building houses out of waste, manufacturing clothes out of waste. That is being done in other parts of the world. So Africa can adopt the technologies that can help in that. So businesses can also still address the social issues and the economic issues. Generating enough income for our countries to be able to offer social support systems for the poor in the continent. So, but this all can be done in alignment with the company vision so that it becomes the company culture. But companies need to know, now we are operating in an era where we have environmentally and socially conscious customers. They want to know how were the goods produced. So customers want to know, how are the goods produced? Are the raw materials being sourced in places where local communities are being exploited? The raw materials also being sourced in places where there are wars because of the resources? Is there abuse of local women and children in the process of sourcing the raw materials? These social issues, customers these days want to know how the raw materials are sourced. Is it environmental friendly? Are the local communities benefiting? So it's very important for a business in Africa to start and be able to show that their operations are beneficial both to the planet and the people, and the economy at large. That will enable the emerging or startup businesses to access funding, grants, attract investors, because they can see that this business is well thought out, or the businesses are well thought out. They are addressing triple bottom line issues. And then once the company can be able to set up systems and mechanisms for triple bottom line reporting, it simply means it's also easier to start monitoring, measuring, and the management of risk in relation to the business operations, more specifically looking at social, economic, and environmental issues. A business that focuses on the issues of planet, profit, and people in a balanced manner tends to have, or to be able to build, public and community support. There's a very good element of trust. So I'm really encouraging small and emerging entrepreneurs in Africa to take advantage of starting their businesses right, anchoring themselves within the mechanism of the triple bottom line, ensuring that their businesses are environmentally sustainable, they're environmentally friendly, and they are sustainable. The focus on the triple bottom line is basically to ensure that the business startup or the small business or emerging business sets up smart targets within the social, economic, and environment areas of the business. Smart targets, I am simply meaning targets that are specific, measurable, attainable, or achievable, realistic, and time-based. So it's very important when you start in your business plan, you set up targets, triple bottom line targets. Examples of those are, for example, in the environment leg or area, is you can say that you will harvest 10,000 liters of water from the rooftop of your building where you are running your business, and then you use the water to run your business. You can establish a small area within a plot or where you are operating where you will say, I will plant 100 indigenous plants. So you're doing some form of small conservation. You can also have a target of having zero waste in your business. No waste on paper, paperless, you become paperless. You can strive for that. Those targets can be set, which are environmental friendly. When we talk about social targets, we can look at creating, let's say, for example, you say you're going to create 1,000 jobs. In those, you can say you will employ 800 women. That's another target, it's a social target to redress inequalities and imbalances in society. You can say also in the process, you can employ 100 people living with disabilities. You can say you will train people, 100 women, on entrepreneurship. You can build a community fund that is used to support local non-profit organizations that are dealing with worthy causes within the area where you are operating. So these are some of the social targets that you can also set. Continuing again on the issue of triple bottom line targets, I also have economic targets where you can say your company will generate R1 million worth of revenue. You can also say that you will acquire 100 million customers. So these are the targets that you can set, that you can measure yourself. They are specific. And you can also go on in these particular targets to indicate by when, which year, or which month. You can become very specific on all of them, both the social, environmental, and economic targets. So they can be time-bound, they can be measurable, realistic, based on the size of your business. So don't come up with targets that are nowhere close to achieving, and then that will just discourage you. So you have to be realistic in terms of the means that you have and the leverage that you have in the form of your business. It is very important for emerging entrepreneurs in Africa to note that it's good to start well, have a very good footing, create a balance from the start of the business approach in relation to the issues of people, planet, and profit. Over-exploitation of resources, natural resources, is not sustainable. So we need to guard against that, because at the end of the day, resources are finite. And we must know, if we are joining this capitalist approach of profit maximization, over-exploitation of resources will ultimately lead to the collapse of the economies that we are running in the continent. So, continuing again on the issue of safeguarding our environment to ensure continuous profitability and the benefit of future generations. This is very good for ourselves as people who are emerging within the space of business. And also we must know that destroying the environment to the detriment of future generations is really in itself a criminal act. And we must not engage in such activities, no matter how attractive the capitalist system is. We must really be very cautious about the greed that permeates the capitalist system, where there's maximum profit for the few, in a manner of doing business that is not environmentally sustainable, which is not socially sustainable either, and also not economically sustainable, because you find that money is concentrated in the hands of very few. They use it whenever they want. The majority of the people are just suffering, and which is also socially not good, because it will lead to unrest. People will just at some point in time stand up and say they cannot take it anymore to be serving the capitalist system that is greedy and insidious. So the thing is, let's learn from other countries and avoid running our continent to the ground in terms of environmental resources. And small businesses need to take advantage of our sustainable practices of the past. Sustainability is not a new concept in Africa. We have always lived in harmony with the environment. People used to mine without using chemicals in places such as Mapungupi. We have sustainable architecture of our houses and skyscrapers, or big buildings that have been built using mud without the use of cement and any form of chemical. Very, environmental friendly, farming practices where we only use compost, manure, green, organic food. So we have this heritage that we need to just tap into when we're starting our businesses. We must not feel ashamed of tapping into our heritage, because that's where the wealth is. Both in terms of starting new businesses, the ideas are there. You just need to, you can start a business doing videography in relation to dances that we have, interviewing people, older people about their heritage and cultural practices. There's so much that we can just capture from our heritage. Medicinal plants that are available, that can be harvested, but also we can grow them, propagate them and grow them within nurseries for sustainable use in terms of herbs. So there's so much that we can use appropriately without over-harvesting. We can learn quite a lot in terms of the practices of the past, which were in harmony with the environment. The push that I'm trying to give here is that let's try to return to our old sustainable ways of life. Let's also strive for self-sustenance. This thing of running businesses that are highly dependent on a capitalist system is also very problematic. Let's ensure that within our families we can feed ourselves, we can medicate ourselves with herbs, we can build our own houses sustainably without using banks, and tie our hands and legs with loans that never end and feed into the capitalist system, where very few people are drinking other people's blood. Let's start right, start sustainable businesses, but let's draw on our heritage. The foundation is there. We just have to tap into it. We are very blessed and very lucky to reside in a continent of highly intelligent people who created languages rich with proverbs, idioms, and anything you can imagine, who built cities in the past, who mined minerals and processed them, who had their own food, who studied the art of writing, who built pyramids. We have got a huge heritage that we can celebrate. And that heritage is full of examples of how to start and run a sustainable business. The business that benefits the collective. So this is very important to look at. This is very critical to understand. It is something that I feel it's very valuable to give advice on, in particular for me as a trained environmentalist who has also started small businesses within the environment space. I know and understand what I'm talking about, and I feel that this can benefit my fellow brothers and sisters in the African continent. Let's start right. Let's draw on heritage. I think it's very important for us to note the significance of government in running emerging sustainable businesses that are environmental friendly. Government needs to come up with incentives to promote emerging businesses that are sustainable. That can be in the form of capital, technology that is environmental friendly, capacity building, mentoring. It can be a whole lot of things that can be done to get people going. And government needs to set up laws, that are strict to deal with businesses that come here, or even our own businesses that are very destructive to the environment and to the people. I've got cases here where I've been discussing with friends. There are mines, for example, in Limpopo where I come from, where the whole community will not benefit. There will just be 2-3 individuals that are getting a huge amount of money for themselves on a monthly basis. So those things need to be avoided. Social equity is very important. It's very important. We need also to use our small businesses to exploit opportunities that relate to our problems. And in this case, there's so much waste now that I've seen in our cities in the form of plastic. In some countries also it's in the form of old clothes. Let's use those things to create new products without polluting the environment. Let's use those things to build homes, manufacture clothes. We can also develop things that we can export to other countries. Reusing, recycling waste, paper, plastic as an example, can take us very far. Heritage is where our wealth is, and we must not be ashamed to tap it before some of the things that are there disappear because of our ignorance. Starting right, starting a business that is anchored on considering the issues or the benefits to the planet, to the people, and also ensuring that there is still profitability that is shared amongst all of us here in the African continent. That's very important. So, lastly, I appreciate you listening. This is the Succeed in Business podcast. It will bring the best in you. Failure is inspiration. Success is within your reach. Do not give up. And I thank you.
If you want to get a copy of the book, contact Mpho Nenweli at 082-567-3099 on WhatsApp and on email mpho@anisa.co.za. The book costs 259 rands including courier.